Speaker, could I first of all apologise to Mr Blair that I wasn't in the House for his opening in this, and indeed to the House for not being present during the early parts of this debate. I had a family funeral I had to attend earlier today. In respect of this bill, I do have to say this. I think it's ill-considered. I think it's needless. And I think in some parts it is very poorly drafted. It really is a triumph of prejudice against some country pursuits. And I think, if I might say it, that it's an overreach on the sponsor's part in terms of imposing his view of the world, particularly on country communities. A good starting point in looking at any legislative proposal is to ask the question, is the current law adequate? Mr Salford, in his last intervention, made the point, you have no right to be cruel. Indeed, that's exactly why one of the last acts of the old Parliament in Northern Ireland in 1972 was the Welfare of Animals Act, followed through with some updates in this House in 2011. And for those 50 years, it has been a criminal offence to cause unnecessary suffering to an animal in any circumstances, including in the course of hunting. And cruelty itself is defined in that legislation as unnecessary suffering. You'd think, listening to some in this debate, that we're entering into the novel territory of suddenly, for the first time, embracing the concept of avoiding cruelty to animals. But this bill isn't about targeting cruelty. This bill is about targeting hunting per se. That's the target in this bill. I'll give way if I have time at the end, because time is limited. It's not that there even has to be a kill to create illegality in this bill. It's the chase that is to be criminalised by this bill. And to be done in a way which is wholly oppressive. Because what this bill creates in clause 1 is a strict liability offence, as Mr Blair intends. That's the starting point and that's the finishing point in this bill, that you shall create a strict liability offence. Now, what is a strict liability offence? Well, it's one where you don't have to bother with showing intention. It's one to which there's no excuse. It's one to which, if it happens, no matter what the circumstances, it's an offence. Let's take some examples. Driving with no insurance is a strict liability offence. Doesn't matter that you forgot to renew your insurance. Doesn't matter that you thought you'd renewed it. Doesn't matter that you told the wife to renew it and she didn't do it. It doesn't matter anything. No excuse will broach a prosecution for no insurance, for very good reason, that it is critically of public interest importance that you do not allow any leeway for circumstances where other members of the public can be injured by your acts. Therefore, you cannot have any excuse for not having no insurance. They are few and far between in the law, offences of strict liability. Another is statutory rape. If someone has intercourse with someone under the age of 14 or under. Doesn't matter what the consent was, doesn't matter what the excuse was, doesn't matter what the belief was as to age. It is statutory rape. It is a strict liability offence. And what Mr. Blair is seeking to create here is the strict liability offence that if you're out walking a dog and a dog chases a mammal, it's an offence. Now, I say that because of the marriage between Clause 1 and Clause 6.3. Because 6.3 is very clear in Section 1. That's the one that makes it the strict liability offence of participating in hunting a wild animal with a dog. In Section 1, the reference to participation in the hunting of a wild mammal with a dog includes a reference to participation in another activity, in the course of which a dog hunts a wild animal. So the other activity could be walking the dog. Many's a Sunday afternoon when I had a golden retriever. I walked by the banks of the Kellswater River. And if my dog had run off and killed a rabbit, nay, not even killed a rabbit, chased a rabbit, hunted a rabbit, under this legislation, I would be guilty of an offence. How absurd is that? And it's not just loose, careless drafting. 6.3 is there for a purpose. It's there to underscore the strict liability of Clause 1. It's there deliberately, consciously, to make it a strict liability offence if you're engaged in an activity such as walking your dog and your dog merely chases, hunts a mammal. You've committed an offence. Now, what happens to a farmer in the community who's convicted of an offence such as this, who holds a firearms certificate? The first knock he will get at the door is from the PSNI on the foot of a criminal conviction, asking him to hand over his weapon, his shotgun. All because Mr. Blair thinks it's right to create a strict liability offence out of a dog doing a natural thing of chasing a rabbit. That's why I say this is an absurd piece of legislation in its reach and in its intent. Because Mr. Blair told the Agricultural Committee he wanted to create a strict liability offence. That's what he wants this House to vote for, to create such a strict liability offence. That is why I will not be voting for this bill. Yeah, I'll give way to Mr. Stalford.
Thank you, Mr. Allister, for giving way. You say that the bill isn't about the targeting of cruelty, it's about the targeting of hunting. But the fundamental issue at stake here is that hunting is a form of cruelty. And that's what the bill targets. And no matter the hypotheticals that are outlined about dogs chasing rabbits across fields, the fact of the matter is that what we're talking about is a practice whereby packs of dogs chase animals, and if there's a successful conclusion, the animals end up dead and ripped to pieces. That is a form of cruelty.
About much more. I could begin to understand this bill if that's what it was talking about. This bill is talking about any chase, anywhere, by any dog of any mammal. That's what this bill is talking about. Now, if the intent was what Mr. Stalford says, and what Mr. Blair might later tell us really was his intent, then why was it not drafted that way? Why was it drafted in this wholly inclusive way that it becomes a strict liability offence for a dog to chase a rabbit? Really? I'll give way to well, I'll start here and work round if I have time.
Thank you, Mr Allister. Thank you for giving way. I just want to clarify, and maybe this is a technical point, but the interpretation of 6.1, and this is in relation to your comments of 6.3, and I appreciate the members giving examples of the hypotheticals, but would there not need to be a person and dog in pursuit for that to be met?
If the bill stopped at 6.1, yes, but 6.1 is then superseded by 6.3, and 6.3 is the point that takes you to the position where man walking dog, dog's off the lead, dog runs away, chases. That's all it takes. Hunts a rabbit. Offence complete. Because the man has been taking part in the activity, and then it says in 6.3, in the course of which a dog hunts. Not in the course of which a man and dog hunts. In the course of which a dog hunts. So the actus reus of the offence is the dog hunting the rabbit. And you don't need any mens rea, you don't need any intent. That's it. End of. Mr Stalford made a point about the cruelty. Yes. What I don't hear talk about is take some of our diminishing species. Take the curlew, which foxes present a real threat to. I'm sure when the fox catches the curlew and pulls it to bits, it's pretty cruel. But in this situation, the only interest is someone catches the fox. How can that be right? Yes?
The difference is that we're human beings endowed with conscience, whereas a fox killing a bird is going about what obviously is natural to it. We can exercise our conscience not to be cruel.
Dog that chases the rabbit isn't doing it out of a call of conscience. He's doing it out of natural instinct. And yet we want to make natural instinct a criminal offence. Criminal offence. Give way.
Very much, the member for giving way. I too have reservations about hunting foxes with a pack of dogs. However, like the member opposite, I've had dogs all my life, mostly golden retrievers. And as a member himself would know, you can't keep them out of water and you can't keep them from chasing wild animals. It's their natural instinct. My last dog was a Newfoundland, which is a heck of a bit bigger, but a dog more in love with the water. I have reservations about this bill. I cannot support this bill in its current form. Yes, while I would agree that it's cruel to chase an animal to exhaustion and rip it apart if you catch it, that is cruel. But what about the fox? The damage the fox does. You mentioned curlew, but there's also lapwing, grouse, corncrake and plovers. All ground nesting birds taken by foxes. To ask anybody in here from a country background like me what a fox can do if it gets into a hen house, it doesn't kill for food. It kills every hen, every one in the hen house. It'll kill it. That's cruel. But it's the fox's instinct. And we're making legislation here to curb animal instincts, but not the fox. The fox has no natural enemies that I'm aware of. It has to be culled. It's a pest. The grey squirrel is a pest. Rats, pest. Mice, pest. So I cannot understand the legislation that's trying to protect a fox. Yes, I have reservations about the dogs, as everybody has of a right mind, but it's the damage they do to the countryside. Mr Allister and I had a walk to our dogs across the countryside and they took off because they weren't on the lead. We're country people.
Order, order. Can I remind members that interventions should be brief? And
thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I shall be brief. Neither he or I would be here today because we'd be in jail. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Well, I can only respond that the member is correct. This, to put it very shortly, is pro-pest legislation. Pro-pest legislation. Save the pest, criminalise the dog walker. Yes?
Thank the member for giving way. So the member support the principles of the bill. Will the member be bringing forward amendments at committee stage? And does he acknowledge that there are other methods of control, such as fencing, non-lethal traps, removal and noise and scent repellents. There are ways to control wildlife other than that which is being put forward today.
Sorry, the member wasn't
Order,
listening.
member. Can I ask the member to bring his remarks to a close?
Yes,
15 minutes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Little wasn't listening to me, because I made it very plain. I am not supporting the principle of this bill, because the principle of this bill is to make it to criminalise walking my dog. I cannot accept that.